In years past, Dave, we used to have to campaign in Florida. And we used to have to do events. And Governor Ron DeSantis deserves a lot of credit for this, from voter registration, being an effective governor. Democrats have given up on Florida, and so that allows us to better focus our resources. Ohio used to be a battleground state, Dave. Not anymore. Trump is up 11 in Ohio. That is gone. Iowa used to be a battleground state. Now, I'm doing this because in years past, we used to have to work our way up from, okay, got to win Iowa, got to win Ohio, then you got to win Florida, and then we can get into those next second and third tier threshold states. That is not the case this time. This time we start from a far better place than we have in years past, where now North Carolina, we should win. It's a little shakier, I'll be honest with your audience, given some problems with Mark Robinson and just other factors. North Carolina is not in the best place that it should be, given other states. However, if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, he's president of the United States. If you're telling me that Trump has to win 3 states, all three of which he's won in previous elections, one of which he won in 2020, and then the other he fell 10,000 votes short of, that's a great starting point.
It's a crazy world, crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you. It's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you.
All right, joining me today is the founder of Turning Point USA and the host of the Charlie Kirk Show, as well as multiple-time Rubin Report guest Charlie Kirk. Charlie, how are you, my friend?
Dave, I'm doing great. Great to see you. Thank you for having me. And you've been so good to me and us throughout the years. So I want to make sure I express that gratitude, and great to be back.
Now, Charlie, you sound a little dour or a little depressed or a little soft-spoken. Those were kind words, and I appreciate it, but what's going on here before people think something weird's happening?
I'm trying to audition for the NPR News Hour. So I'm trying to, change my vibe. I've been on these campuses, and I've been known to have a lot of energy and a lot of passion. I think it's time for Charlie Kirk 2.0, where it's more thoughtful and slow. All kidding aside, Dave, I did 7 events in Pennsylvania within 24 hours. And even for me, that was too much. I felt my voice was holding. First time in my career, my voice just went out last Thursday, and just couldn't talk for literally 3 days. So I had to rest it for 3 days, which is awfully humbling. But it's actually a lot better right now. I'm able to have a conversation with you and be intelligible. So not quite yet recovered, but we're getting there. So if people grant me a little grace, it's not the NPR hour.
Yeah, I was going to say something kind of funny about like a conservative or just relatively sane human being trying to talk with the cadence of an NPR host. It would sound pretty damn disturbing. I mean, that's the worst. Like, why don't we start there? What is wrong with these people? And I'm talking about everyone besides us at this point.
Well, but I'm telling you, Dave, with the NPR voice, what's so frustrating is they're talking about such like hyper aggressive topics in like this very muted way. Today on the NPR Hour, we talk about how half the country should be exterminated from the face of the planet. And experts say it's good for the climate. Today on NPR. It's like, wait, what? I'm sorry, did you just talk about like mass genocide in this like very muted, passive aggressive voice? I think that's what bothers me the most about the NPR voice.
I always say under that very thin veneer of pleasantness, there is something very, very nasty with most of these people. But let's dive in. We've got about a half hour together. Obviously a lot going on. We're 30 plus some odd days out from this election. Let me start with the most broad thing. I mean, obviously you're well within the Trump universe and helping fight on campuses and elsewhere. How are you feeling at this moment about the election?
I feel better than I did in 2020, for sure. I think Trump's in a much better spot. I feel better than even where we were in 2016. With that being said, given the environment, I would think we should be feeling even better because this election really should not be competitive or close given the economy, given the southern border, given the kind of the status of how things are in the country, how people view how things are going in the country. Kamala Harris's campaign team is brilliant. She's receiving coaching very, very well. Dave is someone who's brilliant in broadcasting. I'm sure you see how she constantly is uploading new one-liners, and she's trying to de-emphasize the cackle and the laugh and try to turn it into something that she isn't. But yes, as far as the map and what's going to matter, here's the good news, Dave, and I give you full credit for this. Florida is no longer a battleground state, so thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Happy to help. It's my way of giving back.
I
to
give
the country.
Dave 100% credit. It was a battleground state until the Rubin Report moved down to Miami. But that's a big deal. In years past, Dave, we used to have to campaign in Florida. And we used to have to do events. And Governor Ron DeSantis deserves a lot of credit for this, from voter registration, being an effective governor. Democrats have given up on Florida, and so that allows us to better focus our resources. Ohio used to be a battleground state, Dave. Not anymore. Trump is up 11 in Ohio. That is gone. Iowa used to be a battleground state. Now, I'm doing this because in years past, we used to have to work our way up from, okay, got to win Iowa, got to win Ohio, then you got to win Florida, and then we can get into those next second and third tier threshold states. That is not the case this time. This time we start from a far better place than we have in years past, where now North Carolina, we should win. It's a little shakier, I'll be honest with your audience, given some problems with Mark Robinson and just other factors. North Carolina is not in the best place that it should be, given other states. However, if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, he's president of the United States. If you're telling me that Trump has to win 3 states, all three of which he's won in previous elections, one of which he won in 2020, and then the other he fell 10,000 votes short of, that's a great starting point. And we're not even getting into Wisconsin, which was 21,000 votes short in 2020, or Arizona, that was 10,000 votes short. And so it's a great map for Trump. What should happen is that it should break in Trump's favor somewhere around mid-October. However, we can't underestimate Kamala Harris and their team's ability to chase ballots, register voters, engage in early voting. And so I remain saying this is a 50-50 election. I think Trump has a 50% chance of winning.
That is a bold prediction, my friend. 50% Trump, 50% Harris. Pretty good. Well, let me ask you something that's actually a little trickier for guys like us to talk about and still be able to make a living, which is that I think a lot of people right now are worried that there are going to be some shenanigans. We don't have to relitigate 2020, but I think a lot of people are worried that it's going to be the day before the election. We're going to see weeks of massive Trump rallies. We've seen this kind of new coalition of RFK, Tulsi, Elon types come around. We're not seeing a lot of people break the other way, really. And everything is going to feel like Trump is going to win, and we're just going to wake up the next morning and he will not have won. How worried are you of that? That there's really no way, like I know, okay, we can all say 50-50 or whatever, but that there's really just no way to gauge these things properly anymore because because there is no mainstream that makes sense anymore. So we're all kind of off in our own little universe trying to just get a touch point that makes sense.
It's an important point. I am worried about it. And I will. This is where I'm different in the camp than some people. I think there's a limit to their cheating. I think, like all things, there's only so much that they can cheat. For example, in the state of Florida, I think they would have loved to have Governor DeSantis not win in 2022. Well, he did by 20 points, okay? Meaning that there's a limit when you have enough public consensus and a good enough ground game. There's only so much the other side can do shenanigans or tomfoolery or whatever. That's number one. Number two, where we are emphasizing our focus on turning point action is the people who agree with us that do not vote. There are tens of millions of people that stay at home and decide not to participate and not to vote, and their ballots are never in the system. So we think the best remedy to a very broken system is driving turnout, is to say if we have enough of our people turn out in record numbers, then we're able to overcome that. But Dave, I don't want to sugarcoat it, and I don't want to mislead your audience. What you just articulated might happen. And I don't say that as a way to make you cynical. I say that to people so that you know what you're dealing with, number one. And number two, it should actually give you more reason and more urgency to vote.
What are you seeing that has changed over the last couple of years on college campuses? You and I used to do a ton of events together, 7-8 years ago. Our lives and businesses have gone in separate directions, so it's been a while that we've done something on stage together. But what are you seeing now that maybe we didn't see back then, or is it crazier? Did any of the craziness go away? I mean, it seems crazier, but you're out there.
I will say this. I mean, and the videos and the pictures speak for themselves. And Dave, you remember the opposition. There's still a fair amount of opposition there. We just did an event at Penn State University. We do these Prove Me Wrong events where we have people come up to the mic and the videos go super viral. We had 3,000 people show up for
Yeah, it
this
was
event.
awesome.
outdoor
We'll throw
event.
some B-roll in so people can see while you're talking right now.
Yeah, and that's no spin. That's no BS. That's not like a bunch of people from like the local GOP meeting. And these are young students at a campus in Center College, Pennsylvania. Similar type crowd at University of Wisconsin-Madison. We're going Arizona State University, similar type deal. Here's the truth. Young ladies, super liberal, no doubt. Okay, very, very liberal. Young men, most conservative they've been in 50 years, and by far the most conservative I've seen them in the 12 years of doing this.
What do you make of this new alliance that I mentioned earlier? This sort of RFK, Tulsi, Elon, I would say me, plenty of other people thing that has more come around. I don't think everyone is traditionally a conservative. And you and I used to joke for years, you'd always be saying, Dave, you're going to be the most hardcore conservative out of all of us by the end because you know what they are. But what do you make of this thing that's happening right now? Because, you know, to me, it's what America is all about, and that's really what Trump represents now. It disagrees. These people wildly disagree on abortion. They wildly disagree on foreign policy and a whole bunch of other stuff, but they love America. They love America and they love free speech. And to me, that is good enough. I can work with that.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's one of the most exciting, underreported developments by the mainstream media. The media is being careful not to touch this because I think they know they'd make it even bigger if they gave any credence to it. And add to the list, Brett Weinstein. I mean, that's amazing.
Yep.
And this guy is a liberal from Evergreen State University, and he's in the fight now. And so what is the through line here between Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, Elon Musk? Number one is that they have experienced, spent time with, fraternized with the left-wing blue beast, and they did not like what they've seen. All of them have a story of personal scorn that terrified them of what that thing is. And you too, right, Dave? I mean, you have your stories. You were way ahead of the curve. But for the record, Dave was like a decade ahead of everybody else.
I was so ahead of the
10
curve,
years.
I was behind it. I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all one big circle. Where Brett Weinstein, Evergreen State University, he was like, what is this? This is complete nonsense. Jordan Peterson, what happened with the forced pronoun stuff in Canada. Elon Musk, to a lesser extent, a personal story, but you could look at how his companies have been targeted, Twitter, free speech. It's only further brought him in that direction. Tulsi Gabbard.
His son, that's now a daughter, or whatever you want to say about that. I mean, that's pretty damn personal, but I get your point.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, no, that's exactly right. I mean, yeah, I totally forgot about that. You're exactly right. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard, co-chair of the DNC, who was the darling of D.C. until she disagreed with the Democrat Party on foreign policy, and she immediately became a pariah. It's like, we're not allowed to deal with you. Or how about Bobby Kennedy? Bobby Kennedy, who ran for the presidency as a Democrat, then an independent. They sued to try to keep him off the ballot, and they sued to keep him on the ballot. Just this incredibly contradictory, non-principled Democrat Party. And all of them kind of simultaneously were like, okay, wait a second. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican, but I like free speech. And this open border thing is insane. And the government has way too much power that's merged with big corporations. And we all love the Constitution. Who's with me? And this kind of Avengers unity team started to organically come together. You see, Dave, there was no central casting of this. There was not some kind of casting director that was like, yeah, and then we'll bring Tulsi Gabbard. This all happened organically. It's a profoundly exciting and groundbreaking story of the 2024 election. 2020 did not have a through line with this story. 2016 did not have a subplot like this. This here is people that, I want you to think about it, a Kennedy, who's the namesake of Bobby Kennedy, the co-chair of the DNC, Brett Weinstein, who was like Mr. Liberal Professor of the Year. And they all have their own personal story. But here's the thing. It's not just that they were, I'm scorned. No. They extrapolated being like, whoa.
Yep.
If this happens to me and these people treated me this way, what am I dealing with this big blue machine or team blue, if you will? And so combining forces it's been amazing to see. I consider many of them friends. And Dave, you know, I'm very conservative, but I also love disagreements and I love agreement on the macro stuff, and the micro stuff is not that interesting to me. And I think that's what makes the conservative movement a healthier movement and a more vibrant movement and a robust movement. And so I think in some ways it is what you and I tried to demonstrate through Unity campus work 7 or 8 years ago. that has now manifested and crescendoed into the presidential election.
I should note that we're taping this in a couple days in advance, but this weekend that has just passed by the time you guys are seeing this, the Restore the Republic rally is taking place. Charlie and I will both be there, or we're there in essence, and we're going to have a whole bunch of interviews, and I'm broadcasting live from there, and there's some time shift disorder involved in all of this, but we'll have all of those videos up as well.
I was careful the way I was talking about it. Thank you, Dave. I was like,
I can see you.
And it happened.
Yes, I will see you in a few days, and also I just saw you, something like that. Let me ask you about the blue monster that you just mentioned, or that blue machine, or the system, or the swamp, whatever you want to call it at this point. I am still, and you know I take August off, so I'm a little delayed, I guess, when it comes to the fall. But I'm still a little hung up on the coup thing that happened. The fact that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer got together clearly with Kamala. They made it very obvious to Joe that they were going to pull the 25th Amendment. And clearly Jill and whoever else didn't have enough juice to fight it off. And I guess the question I'm asking you is, are you still amazed that the machine can pull off these tricks? I mean, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about Trump assassination attempt 1. We don't talk about assassination attempt 2. That somehow, despite all of these people coming together and all the good stuff that you've just pointed out here, the machine finds a way. The House kind of always wins.
I am amazed by it, but what's more remarkable to me, Dave, is how they're able to quell rebellion and how they're able to keep any disagreement from bubbling up. That's what I find to be an interesting psychological mystery to me, where they're able to be like, okay, guys, we're the party of democracy. What we're going to do is put in a candidate with no votes. And if you disagree, we're going to destroy you. And everyone's like, cool. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. And again, this is why Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and these people are defecting, because it's completely insane. And it's so self-evidently bad for the country. And I think that would be clear, though, that the Kamala Harris thing, again, the media has been such an enemy to the American people and so awful on the Kamala thing. This was probably a plan that was many months underway. It was probably started around April or May or earlier. The summer debate when they scheduled with Joe Biden was probably a sabotage to try to get Joe Biden either that will surge. Yeah, please, Dave, interject.
Well, let me pause you there for a second, because do you think because I agree with you on that, actually, but my question is, do you think maybe Trump fell in their trap on that one, in that he was willing to do the debate so early, so it gave them the chance for this thing to swap
do I wish that Trump would not have done the debate? Yes. I think because in some ways the trend was going so well for us. But you look at it from Trump's perspective, it's that he's the guy that's like, there will be no fight he'll say no to, especially against Biden, very personal. You have 4 years of pent up, I should be president and you shouldn't be, right? And understand that not all the data before the debate was nearly as decisive that Trump was going to win. There was polls that showed Biden up, there were polls. So it was still a little bit of a murky situation, right? But looking back at it, we're like, man, we gave the coup plotters the forcing function that they needed, right? And with that being said, I still think we can beat Kamala, and we might. So I don't want to, complain all day long. But looking back, if a candidate who's not doing great wants a summer debate, we should probably put this in like our political strategy book for the next 100 years so our grandkids can learn this. Don't give them that.
Don't give them that. Yeah.
Right. So again, I'm not blaming Trump. He's a friend. Like, I get it. I understand the calculus. But I think we can look back. We can say, when they're not doing well, don't debate in June.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I get it. It was very different at the time. I'm just saying in retrospect. And look, hopefully he wins and it becomes largely irrelevant. So.
No, yeah. But looking at it now, we're like, man, that was the beginning of the end. And they were able to then put Kamala in. It's very clear that all these slogans, all these one-liners were workshopped ahead of time, broad new future on the all this crap, right? That she didn't just all of a sudden become a candidate and had all this branding ready to go out of nowhere. This was definitely planned behind the scenes. Joe Biden fought it, and they were like, okay, old man, good luck. And the one thing that actually screwed up the timing was the Trump assassination attempt, screwed it up a little bit, but they still went through with it amazingly. That's one of the reasons why they had to memory hold that assassination attempt so quickly, is they wanted to get the news cycle onto Kamala. But understand what happened within 1 week. Historians will write this down as one of the most interesting 8 days, never reported by a media. No one was like, oh yeah, that's interesting how that'll happen. Trump gets shot. Trump becomes the nominee. Kamala becomes the nominee. 8 days. So you have a shooting, a convention, and a switch, and no one asked the question, like, what the hell just happened here? Like, who's in charge? And by the way, Dave, can somebody explain to me, was there like a Zoom call where like Kamala Harris officially became the nominee? Was there like a text message or like—
Charlie, it was
what's the
very
process?
grassroots. I've been told it was a grassroots effort to install her with no votes. Please don't ask any more questions.
No, I want to know, at least for like future planning, if what exact, how did this work? Was it like a Slack channel, or like no one has ever explained? It's just like, oh no, all the delegates pledged support for it. No, I got that, I know. But was there ever like a sequence? Right. And it's chilling, Dave, how millions of Americans just bought it. They were cool with it. Like, yeah, the person that didn't even make it to Iowa in our party back in 2020 is now the most popular person ever. But hey, that's the party of democracy.
Well, what does that tell you about the modern Democrat Party? Because, you know my feelings about the word liberal, and I can't really call myself a liberal, not because I am not in some old school sense, but because the word has just been so mucked up, it doesn't fly for me anymore. It's just not worth the explanation. But what does that tell you about the sort of general state of the average Democrat voter, that they sort of like being spit on in the face, actually?
It's a couple things. I don't think it's hard to overstate how much they hate Trump and what deals they're willing to cut in their own mind and in their politics to get rid of Trump. I think that's a big part of it. And I think they hate Trump so much that they're willing to privately say, we got to get rid of Trump. Let's just put our democracy stuff aside. I really think that's a core piece of this. The second piece, though, is that the Democrat Party for the last 20 years post-Obama has been more like an oligarchy. The country runs more like an oligarchy. The Democrat Party absolutely runs like an oligarchy. Now, mind you, the Republican Party used to run like an oligarchy. And the 2016 race was supposed to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
That's what the race was supposed to be. Two families that have ruled before with their own fiefdoms. They agree on everything except corporate tax cuts. That's it, right? Like the whole election would have been about like corporate tax rates and I don't know, like school choice or something. Okay, great. Like that would have been the whole election. And that way, no matter who wins, DC wins. Trump blew that up and took over the Republican Party and kicked the plutocrats out. And many of them went into the Democrat Party. Leon Panetta, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, they're now in the Democrat Party.
Oh, yeah.
They help run the Democrat Party. Literally, it's not an exaggeration. And so the average Democrat voter is possessed by the hatred of Trump. And the rulers and the leaders, they're like, hey, instead of having to deal with primaries, we just call the shots. And an oligarchy is the ruling of the few that are untouchable. And so it's a very chilling development. It is.
Let's dive into a couple of the issues, because you and I, although politically we've definitely come closer over the years since we first met, we don't agree on everything, which is completely fine. And I don't want to do a back and forth on who's right about the issues, but I want to talk about abortion and sort of how it might hurt. Well, you might argue it would help Trump in this election. Although I consider myself begrudgingly pro-choice, and we can pick what that means, whether it's 12 or 14 weeks. Or whatever, here in Florida, we have 6, obviously. I was for the reversal of Roe v. Wade because abortion obviously is not a constitutionally guaranteed right. However, it seems to me this is always going to be a loser for Republicans. Also, not because of the optics exactly as much as the Democrats are just going to lie about the Republican position on it all the time. For example, at the debate that he's for a national abortion ban, and no matter how many times he says he's not for it, in that first debate with Biden, I thought that was the best 3 minutes he's maybe ever given politically to explain himself. And then to say, oh, and I don't even know if this is going to help me electorally. So my question to you is not to debate abortion, rather than is this the great card they have up their sleeve always to get voter turnout at the last second?
No, for sure. It's a great question. And you know me, I'm a pro-life absolutist and totally respect disagreements on the issue because most of the country's not where I'm at. And you got to be realistic. Yes, to answer your question first, politically and then morally are two different issues, the way I look at it. Because as a spokesperson, as an advocate, when I'm on campus, I don't move an inch on the moral topic. I'm not running for office, and I try to make arguments that way. Politically, you have to win elections, and you have to try to win elections by persuading a majority of people in states to agree with you. And the majority of the country is not even close to where I am on abortion. And the only thing I would push back on, you said it's always going to be a loser. I don't know if always is. Maybe the country will become more pro-life. Maybe people like me will be successful.
I can grant you that. Let's say in the next decade or so, something like that. Yeah.
Fine. Currently, it is a political problem for Republicans for many different reasons. And the first reason is that people who call themselves pro-life are not actually as pro-life as I am. They're like, well, I'm pro-life, which means like abortion in the first trimester. And like, okay, well, we have different definitions of what pro-life is. Let me say this, though, is that if Kamala Harris wins, she said she's going to use the filibuster to get rid of any state sovereignty on this issue and nationalize Roe versus Wade. You disagree with that. I disagree with that. And so now we agree that that is like nationalized abortion zealotry that has no space at all in our country.
Absolutely.
And it would reverse a lot of pro-life momentum that I care deeply about. Number two, which is the pro-life infrastructure. Kamala Harris, as Attorney General, she used the California Attorney General's office to go after David Daleiden, to go after journalists, to go after pregnancy resource centers. Kamala Harris would use the IRS and the Department of Justice to go after pro-life organizations, nonprofits, 501c3s, and companies just because they would be spreading, medical disinformation. The final point, though, that I'll say this is that Trump's in a very difficult position in the sense where he delivered a reversal of Roe versus Wade. The pro-life movement largely is now not sure what to do about that, to be perfectly honest. Do you run on a national ban? Do you run on a state type thing? I have my own opinions, none of which have been listened to or kind of followed and not that applicable. For
the record, I think Trump's played it perfectly. I think Trump's messaging on this has been absolutely perfect. I don't know that it will get more votes, but I think it's been clear.
I wouldn't say perfect. I would say he should not say reproductive freedom. I don't think that's smart to use left-wing. There was one Truth Social where he said that, and I told him that privately, and I think he received that. However, given the circumstance, I would agree he's been very prudent in how he's navigated this. And I want everyone who's pro-life to understand this as well, that Donald Trump very well could have just said, forget all of you guys. I'm just going to be, I'm going to say that I believe in 12 weeks nationally and just get rid of the issue. And instead, he says, look, we brought it back to the states. We reversed Roe versus Wade. And I agree with you. His abortion answer with Biden was the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he talked about late-term abortion. And I was like, man, if we could just have that kind of on repeat. And so let me just finish with this, which is that those of us that are pro-life are never going to stop advocating for the unborn, advocating for this obviously deeply important moral topic. But I also don't live on fantasy land in politics, and I don't act as if it's a political winner when currently it's not.
Let me ask you another hot one, which is that the Democrats, and I guess this goes to how confused they are about almost all the issues. When it comes to foreign policy, they are obsessively pro-war as it pertains to Ukraine, Russia, even though Putin's got nukes. No defense of Putin, just a reality. And they're wildly anti-Israel. How do you put these two things together?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let's just be honest. There's significant Jew hatred in the base of the Democrat Party. Both movements have anti-Semitism. The Democrat Party has it like in the fibers of their party. And I have the best piece of evidence for this that no one can refute. Josh Shapiro should have been the vice presidential nominee. Pennsylvania might go to Trump, and I'm not saying this as like some sort of broad prediction. Just look at all the numbers on the ground and the chatter, and yet you have this very popular governor with a sizable political operation who just has one problem, Dave. He's a Jew.
Yeah.
Well, not a problem for me or you, but like for the Democrats, they were like, there's no way that they wanted to turn Chicago into a race riot about, what's happening in Israel. That's a big problem. That was an undercovered story that someone was actively discriminated against from becoming a vice presidential nominee simply because he was Jewish.
Charlie, you'll find it interesting. He was my choice. When I left to go off the grid for August, one of the last things I said, I was like, I'll make one prediction. It's going to be Josh Shapiro. And I'm pretty sure I said it on air, if not on a backstage show or whatever. Like the only issue would be that they don't want a Jew.
For sure. Yeah. And again, let's just repeat this, that he would right now be making Pennsylvania a far more competitive state, therefore massively increasing Kamala Harris's odds. When they chose this buffoon from Minnesota, Tim Walz, I was like, thank you, I guess. So that's number one. Number two, though, is that the base of the Democrat Party, they view Israel as a mistake. We view Israel as a miracle. Big difference. We view Israel as the hero's triumph of people that were significantly abused, murdered, attempted to be genocided, and were able to create something, basically an oasis in the desert, a place where common law and separation of powers and individual liberty and private property rights were able to flourish in a sea of totalitarianism. They view Israel as a colonialist project that stole land from indigenous. You've heard all the nonsense, right? So it goes back. They hate Israel for very similar reasons why they hate the West.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? That's one of the things that I'm extremely worried about right now. I'm sure you're playing them on your show too, but almost every day I can show you a video of a Hezbollah flag in New York City and a riot, or what's happening in Chicago or San Francisco or Detroit, on top of the homelessness and everything else. What I'm majorly worried about, outside of like the pure political part of all of this, is how long can a Western society, a multicultural society, last when on any given day in any major city you can have terrorist supporters rampaging through the streets? Like, how long do you think that can work?
Well, not much longer. I mean, look at the United Kingdom. It's a husk of its former self. There's a couple components here. Number one, not all cultures are equal. And I say that definitively and clearly, and it drives people nuts. I'm sorry, that Mideastern Muslim totalitarianism is not equal to Western civilization. It's just not. The people are equal, made in the image of God's economy. Let me be very clear. This is not that some people are substandard or anything, not even close. Their worldview is not equal to ours. But number two, what you're articulating, Dave, is an immigration problem. Mm-hmm. And to President Trump's great credit, this is his issue where he's the strongest. We need to have mass deportations for lots of people, including anti-Western, American flag burner newcomers that come to the country at our request. They come to the country with our invitation, and they act in such a hostile and bitter way. No more. They should be deported from the nation, and they should not be here any longer, because we are inviting our own demise.
Charlie, there's literally 100 other things that I could do with you right now, but I'm going to let you save your voice so that you can speak at the event that we are about to go to, that if you're watching this now, we just did. It'll be good to see you.
Already spoke at.
Yeah, it'll be good to see you in real life. My last question is the most annoying one. You know what it is. Who's going to win the election?
Got a coin, flip it.
Come on.
That's it. I have no idea. All I know is what I'm going to do, and I'm working as hard as I possibly can. Dave, you know I don't BS you. I do not know. I can make great arguments for Kamala, great arguments for Trump. It's as 50-50 as I've ever seen it.
Enjoy your throat lozenge. I'll see you this weekend. If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.